Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I am the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. Just back from a bike ride in the heat you guys were talking about a few minutes ago. I was thinking about doing it yesterday afternoon here in Arizona, and my therapist convinced me not to do it. And so I think she was right. We have a hot topic here today, and that is marketing. We started 3 months ago. I think it's been a couple months that we've had a global sales monthly conversation, thanks to the amazing Connie Kadansky who put that together, and she's continuing to put that together. August 8th is the next one in a few weeks for the sales side. And then Anita Rodal said, hey, I'd like to talk about a few things. And then we weaved in Meg Seitz, and now we've got Amanda Huddy as well here. And so we've got three marketing superstars to guide us on different topics of marketing as really a kickoff, I think, to what's going to become a conversation about marketing here at Global Chamber every month. So I think logically it makes sense to have Meg go. Did you guys, Anita and Meg, did you guys talk, and would that be okay?
We had said it was reversed order, but that's fine with me. Whatever you want to do is totally fine.
Okay. So the way I was thinking of this in terms of the order of the speakers was that Meg is going to give us a conversation about marketing content. And one of the most amazing things about content is what not to say. You know, there's certainly the parts to say, and then there's things not to say. And so she's going to weave that into a variety of other aspects that she brings to the table. And then when Anita comes on, she's going to be talking about, now on the verbal side, how do you articulate, whether it's your networking pitch or your business pitch, in a clear, concise way. Again, understanding what you need to say, considering who the audience is, and what not to say. And there'll be other aspects of what she's going to be talking about as well. And then we'll wrap up with Amanda, who is a PR leader. She's going to talk about AI. She's going to wonder if everybody has their Threads account set up. There'll be a variety of other things that she's going to bucket list for us there. So Meg, let's start with you. Meg is the founder and CEO of Toth Shop. It's a global communications agency that focuses in on the human, holistic approach to branding, marketing, and communication. We can't forget that it all comes together. It's not just about content. It's just not about image. It's not just about your brand message. It's about how it all comes together in a beautiful, neat package for who you're targeting. And Meg is really good at that. So Meg, we're looking forward to your conversation today.
Awesome. I'm really happy to be here, Doug. Thank you for inviting me. So we've got two options. I have a PowerPoint deck, or I can just talk. Do we have player's choice here on what we prefer?
PowerPoint.
Talk. Oh my gosh, you guys are already divided. Doug, please make the final call here. If you want to share the screen, or I can just talk.
What do you feel most comfortable with?
You know what? I'm happy to just talk it out if you guys are good with that. And if you want the PowerPoint, I can put my my email address in the chat afterwards, and I'm happy to send it if everybody's good with that.
The other thing that we do is, for everybody who signs up, we can send that PowerPoint to everybody.
Perfect.
Okay, so so that's cool. So my preference, honestly, is not PowerPoints, because death by PowerPoint is one of those things that feels very painful. And so let's give that a try, and we look forward to it.
Okay, perfect. All right. Again, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for taking time in your day to be here. As Doug said, my name is Meg Seitz, and I am the founder and CEO of a company called Toth Shop. We are a global communications agency, and like Doug said, I take a real focus on the human and holistic approach to branding, marketing, and communications. So you're going to see woven through this conversation a lot of talk about what it means to be a human in your marketing. So as Doug said, let's talk about, what not to say and what to say when it comes to marketing. And I'm just going to offer you a little bit of an alternative to maybe traditional marketing, trendy marketing, that kind of thing. Just a wee bit about my business and what we do. So we have worked with companies all over the world for the last decade, and we really focus on everything from the foundational messaging, so mission, vision, values, brand voice, brand narrative, to rewriting your website. So a lot of this advice will have to do with the kind of the woo-woo, the foundational stuff, the big picture stuff, and then also the very tactical messaging and content needs. So I'm going to kick it off here, and I'm going to ask you a warm-up question. And you don't have to reply. I just want you to take like a hot second to think about it. Here's the warm-up question. What's the most human thing your brand does? What's the most human thing your brand does? So when we give this presentation, a lot of times we'll hear answers like our vacation policy, our maternity leave, our work from home. We hear a lot about what moves are being made internally to support the people that work there, which is wonderful. My challenge to everybody is that we very rarely hear anything about marketing messaging in the conversation about what's the most human thing that our brand does. So I'm going to give you a couple of things. I'm actually going to give you 5 things that I want you to think about when it comes to sharpening and honing the humanity in your marketing message. So the first thing I want you to think about, and again, these questions are going to be in the PowerPoint that Doug sends afterwards. So if you're feverishly taking notes, I got your back. The first thing I want you to think about is, as a company, as a brand, this also is wonderful if you are a personal brand as well. How are you featuring or talking about humans or human ingenuity in your marketing messaging? A lot of times, companies are adamant about talking about products and services, and they're really, let's talk about the value props. Let's talk about this stuff. And what I would like to challenge you to think about is, how are you going to be featuring the people who are either working in your company, maybe the people who founded your company, or maybe even your customers or the potential customers that are out there in your marketing messaging. So if we're talking about what to say or not to say, one of the things I really want you to focus on when it comes to what you say in your marketing messaging is I really want you to think about featuring the people who are part of your brand. Tell their stories. One of our clients right now is they're a publicly traded company, and our work with them is strictly telling human interest stories within their brand as part of their marketing strategy. They've never really done it before, but post-pandemic, they really want to focus on human interest pieces. That can be done whether you're a small shop, whether you're mid-size, whether you're large, you can focus on your people. So I want you to think about how you're featuring and talking about humans in your marketing. Second piece is, does your messaging talk about your clients, or does it talk about you? And I say this because we do a lot of website rewrites, and a lot of times I'll see first draft copy from companies, marketing managers, whoever was tasked with the idea of, we've got to write this website copy. And a lot of their messaging is, here's who we are, here's what we do, here's all about us. And a lot of times the challenge is, how do we start to think about that a wee bit differently? How do we make the marketing messaging not as much about who we are as a company, though that will come later in your sales presentation or deck or whatever that looks like. But I really want you to use your marketing messaging to think about how you are solving your people's problems. So your potential client, what are they thinking about? What keeps them up at night? Why is that not the hero tagline on your website? Just something to think about. Third piece here. So this has been coming up a lot for us post-pandemic. So the third question I want you to think about is, who or what is your brand voice? So a lot of times we hear brand voice and brand narrative paired together. And like Doug said, marketing, branding, communications, it's all part of the same story that we're telling. It's your brand equity. And so that brand equity, as we all know, it needs a voice. And so I want you to think about, what is your brand voice? Who is it? is that brand voice still current? Because sometimes maybe if you wrote that website copy or that sales deck a couple of years ago, maybe the voice has changed. To my point about the pandemic, maybe your brand voice shifted after the pandemic, or maybe you've seen a leadership structure change and the brand voice has changed. I want you to really think about what that brand voice is. Usually at this point too, when I talk about it, that some business owners will be like, they'll get a little bit of a cringe in the gut and they're like, I don't even think we have a brand voice. It's just me, or it's just so-and-so who runs marketing. And that works too, as long as it's a voice that's resonating with the people who are on the receiving end. So I want you to just kind of do a little bit of a gut check and see where you are when it comes to brand voice. Fourth thing, again, I have 5, so just hang in there with me for 2 more. Fourth is, do you partner with SEO experts versus turning content or marketing over to them? And I say this because our firm works a lot with SEO and SEO experts. And sometimes we have clients who say, just turn it over to them, just give it to the SEO guys, they'll SEO the website. And it's great because some of marketing today, as I know you'll hear through AI and ChatGPT, it's a lot of science. And I want you to lean into that. But I want you to shift your thinking, and I want your marketing team to shift their thinking to how do we partner with SEO versus how do we turn things over. So imagine your brand has a writer's room and you've got a couple different voices at the table. I want, obviously, your marketing team at the table. I also want SEO at the table. I want sales there as well. But I just want you to think about creating content. Again, on the conversation of what to say or what not to say, I want you to think about creating content that speaks to the science, but then also brings in the humanity too. And we've all seen websites that you're reading through them and you're like, there are a lot of keywords in here. There are a lot of buzzwords, or I feel like they've just like popped up all the buzzwords in our industry and they are on this web page. And that works obviously for the internet. But what I want you to think about is how do we balance out those words so we get picked up by the internet, but we also get picked up by quality leads, the real people who are buying from us. So the last point I have in here is, when was the last time your clients or your potential clients heard from your leadership? And this is actually becoming more of a stance these days with thought leadership. There are a lot of brands who are releasing statements more frequently from CEOs, COOs, CTOs sometimes, especially with the rise of AI. And so I want you to do a little gut check. When was the last time that your potential clients heard from your leadership? That can be a LinkedIn post, it can be a letter, it can be a mid-year letter. That would actually be a really cool thing to throw out to your marketing as part of your marketing strategy right now, is a mid-year letter from somebody in leadership. Again, when it comes to what to say or not to say, we're finding that people want to hear from leadership a lot more. I'm not saying they need to hear from them all the time, but a ping every once in a while is actually going to be really helpful in the long run. And then I have a bonus note here is, I want you to think about when the last time your internal team heard from leadership. And I throw this nod in here because a lot of times marketing teams work really hard to create content and throw things out there and make sure that, social media has 3, 5, 7 posts a week. But then sometimes the internal teams that we work with are like, well, I didn't know that, or I hadn't heard that. And so I really want you to think, is your internal team receiving the exact same marketing messaging? Is everyone on the same page? Again, when it comes to brand equity, what does it look like, not only externally, what the customers or potential customers are seeing, but what does it look like internally? And is everyone on the same page? So why does this matter? I know some of this stuff is like, the humanity side of business, but I want you to really focus on the fact that today, more than ever, there are 3 things that are happening. 1, we're craving connection more than ever as both marketers and communicators, but also as consumers and more conscious consumers. The second thing I want you to remember, which is kind of old school, but it's true, is people buy from people. We can never forget that. So as much technology as there is now, it's still really coming down.
I don't know. I think
buying decisions come down to really.
Steven, I'm going to check that out.
The last thing I want you to think about is I really want you to think about keeping.
Sorry, Cesar, can you help there? I'm not sure I can.
Okay, so all you guys should have those prompts.
Okay, all right. The last thing I want to say, thanks, Doug. The last thing I want to say here is I want to just throw this reminder out there that you really can just keep it simple. Like sometimes we try to overcomplicate marketing. We try to throw all the, pizzazz at it. And I really just want you to remember the humanity of it and just trying to keep it really simple, because if you go away from this with any lesson, I want you to think about how marketing is equal parts science and equal part humanity. So both of those things, the science, the technology, all the things that are changing so quickly now have to be balanced out with the humanity. So my last thing that I'm going to tell you is if you go away from here with one thing that you're probably thinking about a couple of things, but the one thing I'd want you to actually do is give yourself 30 minutes. And I want you to do a quick audit of 5 different things. I want you to do a quick audit of your company website, even your personal website if you're a personal brand. So your company website, your sales deck, your social media, your most recent impact report. So a lot of brands are doing impact reports. We actually just wrote about this morning on LinkedIn. What's your impact report say? And then the last thing is the experience of meeting you, of meeting your team, buying your product, buying your service. So those 5 things, again, I have them listed in the deck, which will go out afterwards. I want you to really think about the science and the humanity in all 5 of those places. So are you writing content? Are you shaping words and stories that both speak to the science, but then also speak to the humanity as well? I know we'll take questions probably after Anita talks, but is there anything initially I can answer maybe for you, Doug?
I do have a question, but I'm going to keep moving just so that we can keep on time, and then we'll have time at the end, as you pointed out. So thank you. I think part of what I think we all need to think about, and I'd like for us all to maybe suggest, is that issue you raise where people end up writing marketing that ends up talking about themselves instead of what they're doing, what benefit, what limitations are they removing, how, we get stuck in our head. And that's been always my objection with marketing. And marketers, quote unquote, 80% of them, I think, still don't get it. So how, if you have tips that you can share later of how people can leave their own head and go into the head of their targeted client, that would, I think, help all of us. In the meantime, let's go to Anita Rodal, who's initially came up with the idea for this session, and I love it. Anita is the founder and president of SBPI Services. She's on the Global Chamber Los Angeles Advisory Board. She's currency and communication. She handles foreign currency exchange, and she worked with 2 different high-profile companies to be able to help companies do that. And she's the expert on communication, in particular verbal communication. But I'm guessing her writing is pretty amazing too. But I know she's really great at verbal communication, and she's going to be talking about that today, including what to say and what not to say. Anita, thanks for all that you do, for continuing to get me to say Cesar's name correctly. I'm going to continue to use your techniques to do it. Thank you. And for all of your work at Global Chamber. Thank you.
You are very welcome. And thank you for creating this amazing organization. I simply love it.
Thank you.
Okay. And it's Cesar. Okay. Well, thanks all for being here. I'm thrilled you're here because guess what? We need to talk about your elevator pitch. So let's ask the obvious question. What is an elevator pitch? And it's actually very simple. An elevator pitch is your one chance to have full control over the information that a captive audience hears about your business. So what is it you want them to hear? Well, there's a number of things that need to go into an elevator pitch. We're not going to go into details on most of them, but I want you to get an idea. So first of all, your self-introduction. I'll explain what that is in a moment. You want to let them know what services and or products you provide, what sets you apart from your competitors, and often those two things are flip sides of the same coin. You also want them to know what types of clients or industries you serve, and that's really to help them know who to best refer to you so that they can send you business that turns out to be business. And then you have a wrap up. I'll explain what that is at the end as well. And you'll notice that I put tagline with optional in bold after it. And that's because unless you have a brilliant tagline, you are not going to want to include one. So a lot of people feel a lot of angst when it comes to trying to fit everything they can think of into their 30-second elevator pitch. But if you will only embrace the golden rule of elevator pitches, I promise you that will disappear. And here it is. 30 seconds is not enough time to mention everything you do, period, end of story. But you can create as many elevator pitches as you need, and you should. You should have 2, 3, 4, 5, because you're going to speak to different groups along the way, or you might want to highlight different things that you do, even talking to the same group on a repeated basis. And you need to know that no one is judging you thinking, oh, he or she only does a couple of things. No. Everyone in the room knows that you do more than what you mentioned, because guess what? They're in the same situation you are. So the self-introduction, let's talk about that, because it's the first thing that people hear when they hear from you. So you want to include your first and your last name. There may be people in the room that have never seen you before, have never met you before. So even if you think you know everyone in the room, just get in the habit of stating your first and your last name. Now, you want to include your title if you feel it's important, and if it makes the cuts that you're going to be making as you write your elevator pitch, and then you time it, then you go back and edit it, then you time it again. So title may or may not make the final cut, but you do want to include your profession and or your company name. You might have time for both, but sometimes, depending on your profession or what you do for a living, one might be more appropriate than the other. So you get to make that choice. But why is this all important in any event? Like I said, it's the first thing your audience hears. So they're going to form an opinion about you the first time you open your mouth. And you want to make it a good impression, which means that you have to enunciate when you are talking, and especially if you have an unusual name. And if you are not speaking in your native tongue, you need to slow down. It takes the brain a beat or two to adjust your listening to when someone hears an accent. It's not good or bad, it's just different. And you don't want to lose out on people knowing who you are so they can reach out to you afterwards by not taking that into account. So try and be aware of that. Now, a few pointers when you're composing your elevator pitch. Don't waste time on filler phrases like, what I do is. You're in a group of fellow networkers. They're there to know what you do. So just jump on in and tell them what you do. Also, when you're writing it, try not to use the same connecting word or phrase twice in the same sentence or paragraph. And to help you not do that, you want to use a thesaurus. Now, if you still happen to have a good old paperback thesaurus like I do, which is disintegrating, you can just reference things in there. But most people do things online anymore. So you've got tons of resources. You've got thesaurus.com, you've got wordhippo.com. And if your first foray into that doesn't give you the word that you think is just right, then pick one of the synonyms it gives you and put that in the search bar, and you'll end up with a bunch of other choices. If you're in Word, I don't know if everyone is aware that Word has a thesaurus built into it. So all you have to do is right-click on the word that you want to find a synonym for, scroll down to where it says synonyms. You don't need to click on it. Just by putting your cursor over it, you'll get this other box that pops up and it gives you 5 choices. And if those 5 choices also don't fit your needs, then you do want to scroll down to where it says thesaurus, click on that, and a whole nother scrolly box of choices will show up on your screen. So you've got plenty of ways to access the synonyms. Now, I mentioned the wrap-up at the end of the elevator pitch, and I want you to think of the wrap-up as bookend to your self-introduction, because everything in between is what you're going to tell them. But at the end of the day, if they don't remember who you are, they're never going to be able to find you or ask about you afterwards. So at the end of your elevator pitch, and it does count as part of your 30 seconds, you want to repeat your first and last name, and then your business or your profession. It's kind of a scaled down version of your self-introduction, just enough to remind them, oh yeah, that's what it is. And you might be saying, well, why would I do that? It was 30 seconds ago I told them my name. But I have to tell you, people have very short memories, myself included. So you want to give them all the help that you can to help them help you. You want them to be able to find you. Also, maybe when you gave your name at the beginning of your elevator pitch, maybe they weren't interested, but then you said something that kind of piqued their interest and they perked up and they're like, oh yeah. And you want to let them know who you are again. So now they can cement all that together. Maybe they weren't listening because they got distracted. Maybe the chat box, if you're on Zoom, popped up and they're reading the message. Like, you kind of can't help yourself but read the message, but it's been proven you cannot do two things at once. You think you can, but you're really not. So if you're reading somebody's text, you're hearing, but you're not listening to what the person is saying when they're talking. So just pretend that all of that, worst case scenario, all of that took place. Just repeat your name first and last and your business or profession, and you'll probably get a lot more referrals from the session. Now, tagline, as I said, it's optional. The question is to include or not to include. And here's my answer. Unless it's exceptional, do not include one. But if you are going to include one, it should not exceed 5 seconds. It counts as part of your 30 seconds. And to help you make it more memorable, you want to use literary devices. That's a term you may not have heard since, I don't know, senior year English in high school. But here's what a literary device is. It's a tool for making things memorable and catchy. So like a rhyme, think about it. Half the things you remember from your childhood probably came in the form of a rhyme. If you can still recall them now, decades later, it's likely that you heard them in a rhyme. And alliteration is a great way to make things memorable. If you have two or more words actually, that begin with the same sound, that are near or next to each other in the same sentence, that's alliteration. And I just gave you 3 examples of it in this very description. And then you have play on words. And those are the hardest things to integrate into taglines because they're hard to come up with. They don't come around very often, but when they do, they're just stellar. So I'm going to give you some examples of all of these things rolled into some fabulous taglines that I've heard. Here's one. Keeping you connected and protected. Are you surprised to learn that this person works in cybersecurity? It's perfect. How about this one? Where experience isn't expensive, it's priceless. So not only does that have alliteration, but it has a great play on words, and no one ever forgets Mike Monteleone's tagline. And here's my favorite. This attorney happens to be one of my favorite people in the world. If it has 2 wings, I can do the contract. If it has 1, I can do the lawsuit. Obviously, he's an aviation attorney. So I want you to know that literary devices are not just for taglines. If the universe gifted you a last name that happens to rhyme with your industry, I beg you to use it. So I have a friend, she is a reverse loan consultant. Well, everybody's a consultant. And I said, wait, why aren't you wrapping up saying L. Jones reverse loans? That's what people are going to remember. Make it short, make it sweet. All right, one extra tip. I have billions, okay, millions, but here's one. Avoid using industry-specific acronyms when you're doing your elevator pitch, unless they're so commonly used that you know that everybody in the room knows what they mean, like CPA. That one I'd feel very comfortable using. You can also use them if you're going to define them during the course of your elevator pitch, but remember that counts as part of your 30-second elevator pitch if you're going to take the time to do that. Or maybe you're in a room with all industry peers, in which case they already know what that acronym means. And then by all means, go ahead and use it. Now, everything I've told you here is basically the tip of the iceberg of everything that I could tell you. So I'm guessing you're not going to be surprised when I inform you that I actually offer a webinar on this. It's a 90-minute webinar, and it comes with a full 33-page workbook that walks you through the steps for everything you need to know. It's like paint by numbers, but for words. I do have summer promotional pricing. It's $79 per person, where it's normally $149. So email me at info@aboutyourelevatorpitch if you're interested in attending the August 16th webinar, which is the last one I will do at the summer promotional price. But because you're on this webinar, if you email me before 11:59 Saturday night, California time, so you have the rest of today, all of tomorrow, I will also give an additional 25% off, which basically makes the price $59 a person. So don't forget, email me at info@aboutyourelevatorpitch.com. Make sure you give me your first and last name, your address, your phone number. My office will email you an invoice sometime during the week and you can pay then. So just let me know that you want to attend the webinar. And I thank you very, very much for attending today.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Great information, packed very neatly and concisely.
I forgot to turn on my timer, so I don't know if I made it to the past 12 minutes or not, but
it was beautiful.
Thank you.
My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. We're in the last 30 minutes of this conversation. We'll end at the top of the hour. We have one more speaker, and then we're going to open it up for questions. If you have some questions, either put them in the chat or better, raise your hand and we'll have you speak. So feel free to raise your hand at any time. And as soon as our next speaker is finished, we'll get to your questions. That next speaker is a superstar just like the first two speakers. It's Amanda Huddy. She's the founder and CEO of Hudson Davis Communications. She's a marketing expert with over 20 years of experience in the B2B space. And in fact, she worked at one of our members previously, and she left and she started her own company, and she's killing it because she's really good at marketing. She, similar to Meg, has that overall holistic knowledge and experience to be able to help companies be successful. So Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today. You're going to be, I think, mentioning AI and its incorporation. And I think you might say something or two about threads, only 5 minutes. So there's a lot to cover. So maybe we can get you next month as well. But what would you like to share today?
Yeah, well, first of all, Doug, thank you so much for having me. And it's such a pleasure to meet you all. I would love to talk to you guys about threads and TikTok and all the things. But Doug really just asked me to talk about what's trending in terms of marketing and communications these days. Obviously, we had a whole week where everybody was trying threads. I'm happy to give you my thoughts and my prayers for everybody. It's unhinged over there. We're having a ton of fun. So it's great. But really, I think the big two things that I'm seeing in the industry that everybody wants to know about is AI. How is AI impacting marketing and communications? And the second is sustainability, what's going on with climate change and the environment. And they're actually more interrelated than we know. So for example, the environmental cost of powering the servers that it takes to power these AI tools is immense. It is bigger than the emissions of the entire travel industry total. So it is a massive, massive number. And I'm very interested in AI, but I am so much more interested in saving our environment and making sure that we have a place to live a few years from now, because it is pretty dire. But the good news is that I've been working with the UN through International SOS since 2017 on communicating their sustainable development goals to Fortune 500 companies and companies all over the world. Meg mentioned impact reports and sustainability reports. Those are becoming increasingly more popular because everybody wants to know, how are you tracking, measuring, and reporting the metrics that tell the story of how you're contributing to environmental protections, environmental sustainability, impact. So just something to think about, and something that I have a few years of experience now helping companies do. I've helped Meta write their reports, Apple, all the folks write some of their reporting, and that's just been a phenomenal journey. There's a lot of work to do there, but ultimately the big question right now is AI. Are people losing their jobs? What's going on? And the truth is, we're learning in real time. I am playing around with the tools. My thought on it is, I just want to know what they are, what they do. I certainly don't need to be an expert in every single one, but I want to be informed. And the best way that I can be informed is to try them. So that has sort of been my stance. One thing that is really tricky in terms of marketing, and just something for us to think about, is we have no protections right now on the data that is inserted into these AI tools. So for example, if you're a marketer or communicator and you're thinking about asking the tool to give you some insights on a client pitch or anything like that, know that there are no protections on that data that you're inserting. So if you enter client data or your own data or things about your client, about their company, about their revenue, anything like that, there are no protections. So just know that those are important questions to talk about with your clients and just to think about as you're starting to explore those tools. Know that that's the case and determine your own comfort level with those things. And so really the two big issues that I'm really seeing are, is this replacing people? And my thought is we're still always going to need people to operate these tools for now. I don't know what's coming in the future, but as of right now, we still need a real person to sort of help prompt and do those things. And in general, the responses that I've seen, while you can certainly get great responses out of AI, the responses are, one, only as good as your prompt, and two, they simply are not human. And there is this sort of human element, going all the way back to what Meg was saying. There's a human element in marketing that makes it authentic and appealing. And without that human element, there is a layer of depth that is missing. So that said, in terms of really important things to watch out for, we're looking at regulations in terms of data protections, corporate protections, things like that. And second, usage and functionality, which is related to ultimately, how are they powering the servers? There are millions and millions of users. So before Threads, which, the millions of users mark happened in merely hours, OpenAI had 1 million users in the course of 5 days. So if you think about the millions and millions of users that are powering these tools and the servers that it takes to make those things work, we're talking about large, massive amounts of emissions in a very, very, very short period of time. And so we still don't know how that is impacting our environment. We know for certain that it's not good. Emissions are not impacting our environment well, but we simply just don't know yet because we are learning those things in real time. That's all I got. And I think that's been 5 minutes. I know I said a lot in a really short period of time.
No, that's great. And thank you very much. I just put in the chat area, kind of building on what you mentioned, a conversation we had earlier this week. It was with Global Chamber Manila Executive Director Colin Christie, who is a technology geek in addition to all the other things that he does. And he went through ChatGPT and AI in a very detailed way, very practical way, more related to sales. And his conclusion on your question was, there's answer clearly is it's not going to replace, it's going to, in his case, make his life a lot more productive. And so you'll see the examples he uses in terms of doing sales calls and doing marketing and understanding how to be better at business. It's an amazing time saver. And so it's really just a matter of now being more successful. But at the end of the day, you still need people for the foreseeable future. So thank you for your thoughts. Thank you all, the 3 speakers, for your comments. Let's see do we have any questions? I don't see any questions. So let's see. Let me go back.
Doug, this is Connie Kadansky. I have a question for Meg.
You do?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
What is your simple definition of marketing?
Oh, Connie, that's a good question. I would probably say the way I define it would be the tactics and strategies to be able to pull or push people to you and your business.
So that sounds like it's lead generation.
Yeah, I think that's one part of it. Sure.
Okay.
I would also say more so than lead generation, really is like a lot of demand generation. So when you're wanting to pull in leads, what you really want is to pull in that demand. I can call a lead and it could be a bogus lead, but Meg's sort of conversation and what a human element brings in is the demand for a service like yours.
Oh, I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think to riff off what Amanda's saying, I'm looking for the quality leads, because we've all been in that place where it's like, let's spend $50 getting a handful of leads that go nowhere. I'd rather have 5 quality leads that are going to lead to money and recurring revenue than 10 that have gone absolutely nowhere. So my concern when we work with clients is where'd the quality people come from? What was the language you used to get them into the funnel? And what ultimately made them buy? And I'm looking for the quality people.
That makes a lot of sense. We've got Catherine Bussman here in the call. She's a marketing expert, the top one in Canada. Catherine, how would you define that? Or is there anything that you wanted to add to the conversation at this point?
Oh my goodness, Doug. That's I would never place myself amongst the best marketers in Canada for sure, but thank you for that's very generous of you. No, I'm always kind of interested in the international angle on marketing, right? And sort of what works in one market might not work in another market, and how to what extent you humanize or personalize your messaging. In the US, for instance, getting very first person singular and very using a language that's very casual, let's say, that can work really, really well in certain markets. In other markets, it might actually backfire. So it's important to always keep those things in mind. Know who you're targeting and know how they like to be spoken to. Yeah, so it just depends on the context. I think what I would just say as a general rule is understand who your ideal customers are, what makes them tick, how they like to be spoken to, get to know them, and then craft your messaging accordingly. And it could look very different from one market to the next. So yeah, it's not. One size fits all for sure. But I really appreciated everything that Meg and Amanda and Anita brought to the table today. Thank you.
One person that does what you just described in terms of multiple markets is Chris Bennett. He was on the Global Chamber of London meetup the other day, had a better understanding, and over time understand that what he's able to do and his team is able to do is market in different countries. And Chris, you were talking about Ghana and marketing in Ghana. So, and there you are in the UK. Do you have anything that you'd like to add to this question or to the conversation?
No, I mean, it's a great conversation. I mean, clearly it's right up my street, the whole thing being centered around brand and everything. But you asked me about Ghana. The truth is we're feeling our way completely because that's a particularly niche. Well, there's two things in there. We're actually talking to young people in Ghana who are looking to get onto the career ladder. And we're doing that through a particular organization. So it's very niche. Anyway, that's the point. And I think as Catherine just said, it's not one size fits all. And so we have to we adapt very much our messaging to suit particular audiences. And in that particular area, we're changing what we're saying as we're actually progressing forward with our marketing in that particular country to those particular people. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And one of the people in the room today who does that quite frequently in different countries is Yuka Nakasone. She's our executive director in Barcelona, but she has her own business, Global Bridges, where she is helping, for instance, rural Spanish wine growers sell their products via e-commerce into Japan. So the concept of now communicating the brand into Spain, now shifting to the Japanese market, those of you who know Japan, that's a big lift. That's a heavy lift. You've got to do that intelligently. Yuka, did you have anything to add to this aspect of the conversation?
I don't know, because everybody said everything very nicely, concisely, and what I would add is to know yourself, know your customer, but know yourself first, because there's 2 or 3 ways to go to another country, like competing against local brands or coming into the local market from foreign country to provide international aspect or brand. So you need to know the people you're targeting, but don't lose yourself in that.
That's very profound, right? And that's, I think, one of the reasons why many of us are involved in global business is you can't just take your product and then localize, meaning like change it completely for each market. That isn't practical. It'll drive you crazy. So I think at least what I'm taking away from it, I've never heard anybody articulate it that well, but that is so important. Thank you, Yuka. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Peter has a question. Peter Grabeck, I think you're going to the Global Chamber event this week. Are you speaking at the Global Chamber event, APEC, this week?
Yes, Wednesday here in the DC area. And, I wanted to thank Anita, Meg, and Amanda for their presentations. And my question is probably going to be geared a little bit more towards what Amanda was speaking about. And, it may be a question, it may be a recommendation on where to look. So I know that in AI, you spoke about the environmental impact of the data storage. And I know that from what I can see in terms of product life cycle and the production side, where there may be emissions, there's the training side of the AI models, and there's of course the data storage and the processing side of it. We actually do a lot of, not my firm, but I'm in the Loudoun County, Fairfax County, western edge of the DC Metroplex, and we have a lot of data centers here. And so I know that a lot of that work is being done here on the data storage side. And then a lot of the training tends to happen more kind of on the West Coast, San Francisco. And I know that the size and scale of training these AI models is increasing. The ones along the lines of ChatGPT, I know it's already exceeding $1 billion just to train up the program. So I'm thinking of this from, I'm a numbers and operations guy and a finance and economics guy, and I'm thinking of this, in terms of where can we peg the metrics in terms of the training, the data, and the emissions aspect, because if we can just begin to peg the metrics to something, whether it's a bit, a byte, or a dollar, we can at least begin to make sense of it, and then begin to take that next step of addressing and controlling the emission side of it. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, Amanda, and get your thoughts and from the other panelists' thoughts and feedback.
Thank you, Peter.
Such an important question, I think. And I think it's important for all of us to understand exactly what's happening. And so, part of the baseline is helping educate people. One, what does training that data mean? What does training the platform mean, right? We have to, in order for it to be AI, we have to give it info. And that takes hours and hours and hours of work. And really where a lot of the emissions are coming from, truly, and where a lot of the cost is coming from, is simply the power supply that it takes to keep these machines on. When you have to sit and train something on decades, hundreds and hundreds of years worth of data, it just takes a lot of stuff. So if you think of, I can sit on my phone for 10 hours and burn through an entire battery. This is millions and millions of phones worth and millions of hours worth. And that all counts to something. We are unclear how they are tracking, how they are measuring, and how they are reporting on this data on a large scale, if that is being done by major institutions at all, or major governing bodies around this space at all. So that's still pretty unclear and hasn't really been clearly communicated. And I'm sure as a comms professional, many of us can speak to the comms issues that are happening in areas that are really impacting all of us. One thing I will say is I'm on Reddit, and one of the channels there is Data is Beautiful. And there was a great chart that I posted on my LinkedIn, and I'll pin it and I'll send it to everybody here, just on the actual numbers. So they were actually able to quantify that a little bit. And that was based on a university study at Stanford. So the data does seem to be a little reputable. In my opinion, there's always factors there, but it's starting to come out. People are starting to present it and synthesize it, but it's still such an untapped market. There's a lot of factors. It's such a great point, such a great question. And I think something that, we need to help communicate to people en masse about what these things mean.
Okay, thank you very much. And one of the people that's an expert in that area is Catherine Bussman, who's started out her career as a marketing expert, and she's built that expertise into the sustainability markets. So thank you, Catherine, for what you're doing. A couple more people in the audience I'd love to hear from. Catherine Reed, for instance, there she is in Austria doing a lot of work in China. So those kinds of marketing issues that you deal with on a day-to-day basis are really challenging, or seem to be challenging, from sitting from afar. What kind of comments do you have based on what you've heard today? And is there anything that you'd like to add, Catherine?
I don't think I specifically have something to add. I mean, obviously, working in China is always the question that, or in any other developing market, that a developing market has a completely different position as to where they are on the sustainability scale, especially. And I think that China as a country is trying very hard to move forward. And at the moment, they're at the point in where probably also a lot of Western countries are as well, but they don't want to admit it, that there's a lot of cheating going on. There's a lot of people who are doing a lot of greenwashing, but they are trying very hard to move forward to improve air quality and all of those kind of things. And it's creating also a lot of opportunities for brands because, of course, especially from Europe, there are a lot of companies who are already working on quite sustainable models. And so for them, when markets like China start to get serious about such topics, then it gives us the opportunity. And of course, on the AI side, then China has its own AI models that they're working on that are also, at the moment, the best estimate that I've heard is that they're about 2 weeks behind the US on that. But being Chinese, they're potentially catching up quite quickly. So we'll see how that plays out.
2 weeks, okay. That sounds like high. Okay. That's amazing. Louisa Drescher, originally from Brazil, and she's a multicultural expert. So we've touched on cultures, and Yuka certainly is an expert in that same area as well. Louisa, are there any other aspects that we should be thinking about in marketing relative to the cross-cultural aspects?
Well, thank you, Doug, and thank you all the experts for the fantastic presentation. I just would like to piggyback on what Chris said about adapting the marketing strategies to the target country. In fact, just my article, my DEI newsletter for this week, I talk about that, the impact of colors. When we are talking about marketing strategies, one thing that is often overlooked is how colors have different meanings in different cultures. So I talk about the importance of adapting our colors if we're going to expand overseas. So thank you, Chris, for mentioning that. And it's in line with it just came out yesterday, my DEI Minute newsletter. Sometimes I focus on global aspects. And this week was how we need to adapt our marketing strategies to our target market.
Good coincidence. And where do they find that? Just under your name, under LinkedIn?
Yes, I'll put the link on the, okay. It will be on my website. You can email me. I'll put my email. I'll send you the link. Or it will be on my website on Monday.
Okay.
And you can subscribe to my newsletter if you want. I'm always talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, as well as global diversity, which is my passion.
You're amazing. Thank you. We've heard from Louisa a couple times, and her content is extraordinary. We have 5 minutes, so I'm going to take one of those, and then we'll go around the room for each one of the speakers for a 1-minute summary. For my summary, I'd like to say you're all amazing. You're all superstars, and thank you for this this conversation. As Anita mentioned, we can't possibly cover all of marketing in 1 hour. She didn't say it exactly, but whether it's your pitch or whatever, you can't do everything all at once. And so that's why we're doing this event now once a month, as we are a separate sales conversation. And I put the conversation from Colin Christie in the chat. it's also on our blog page, the last blog. Listen to that. It will change your life about ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. At Global Chamber, we're trying to change lives by reducing the limitation of growing and growing across borders. We're limited in doing that. When I started 36 years ago on a trip to South Korea, it was hard to do international business. It's a lot easier, and every day we're making it easier to do business by connections and using artificial intelligence and technology. One last thing, and before our speakers give their last comment, we also do some, I think, inspiring things. And one of those, for those of you in Phoenix, come to Global Chamber, the building behind me. That's where we'll have an event on Tuesday. It's Mandela Day, and we're going to have a conversation with 25 African leaders, and Dr. Sanjeev Kagram of Thunderbird will be sharing his perspectives on Nelson Mandela, who he's met, and what his legacy means for him, for Thunderbird, for Global Chamber, and for the world. So Tuesday, it's in person only, unfortunately, but if you're in Phoenix, please stop by. It's nice and cool here, so it's a great place if you want to stop by. Meg, how about we start with you? Your 1 minute summary conclusion?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I've connected with some of you on LinkedIn and email since I've given, I mean, y'all work fast. So thank you. Please connect. I would probably say, I mean, I've taken some notes based on the conversation, and I think it was a good point someone made about knowing yourself first.
Yuka,
like,
yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think that's so true. And I think we forget that as brands and marketers and companies, that when we know ourselves first, we can make every decision from that place. And I think knowing yourself is both a foundational messaging piece, but also knowing how you are using technology and what your stance is on the people in your brand. So I think that was like a really nice shout out. So thank you for saying that, Yuka.
Great thoughts. Amanda Huddy, what 1 minute conclusion would you like to make? Uh-oh, is Amanda there? Are you on mute? Let's see. I don't see Amanda yet. Yep, no, she must have dropped off. Uh-oh. So we have 1.5 minutes for you, Anita. What would you like to share?
Let me see. I'm sure I can't talk for that long. I want to kind of reinforce a simple point. The less time you have, the more important every word is when you're representing yourself. And people pay a lot of money, or even if they don't, but when they join networking groups such as the Global Chamber or several others that are out there across the US and probably around the world, it's not just a matter of investing the money to be there. That's pointless unless you're going to take advantage of the time they give you. So whether it's 30 seconds or 45 or 15 seconds, you want to be able to convey the important things in order of importance, regardless of whatever time they give you. And that's what I'm able to help with, because my system already gives you the tools to evaluate and organize and prioritize. So it's not so much about pushing my system, but I create it for a reason out of sheer frustration, because I've been moderating a B2B networking group every month for the last 10 years. And you can only time people out so many times before you just go, no, there's got to be a better way. So whatever you do, take the points that I mentioned here and try and weave them into what you already are doing for your elevator pitch, even if it means starting over. Just don't be married to anything that you've already produced. You have to take a step back and say, is this really the best use of my words and my time? That's what it comes down to. And I'm still re-editing my stuff that I thought was perfect when I did it. And all of a sudden somebody will say something to me. I'm like, well, I thought I made that clear, and clearly I didn't. So just don't be married to anything you write. Be willing to listen for the feedback. It's not going to be necessarily direct, but when people give you questions, that's feedback. Use that, rewrite, edit, rewrite, time yourself. Your clock is your friend. You have to time yourself, and that will help you to be a better speaker.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Meg. Thank you all for attending today. One last comment is that Global Chamber is about removing steps to be successful. And so mainly we do warm introductions. We also do events, and 2 events that I failed to mention, although Peter Grabick is a speaker at the one of them. It's about the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation preview meeting in Global Chamber, Baltimore, Washington on Wednesday, the 19th. If you're in the DC area, definitely check that out. And then if you're in London on the same day, same night, right, I guess timing wise, it's going to be separate. You could probably fly between, is Global Chamber London Summer Barbecue. So again, mainly we're focused in on business, but occasionally we have some fun too. And this has been a lot of fun. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, everybody who attended today. Have a great Friday and weekend.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody, for attending today. Thanks, Catherine. Sorry to surprise you. Catherine, too. Both Catherines. Hey, Dwayne, how are you? Good to see you. We're going to see you on Tuesday with the Mandela Fellows. Are you there?
I'm really hoping to be there. I have a little bit of a conflict. What time is it?
It's 3:45.
3:45. I will break a leg just to get there. So yes, I'm going to be there.
One of the fun things about that one is that we found our Addis Ababa Global Chamber. Our Global Chamber Addis Ababa executive director through Cafe Lalibela, because it's a woman who owns the business, but her son now runs it, Anibal, and Anibal's been a member of Global Chamber. So he said, wow. Hey, talk to my cousin. And so I did, and she became our executive director. And coincidentally, she's in the US and she's going to be in Phoenix on Tuesday, and she'll be coming after the session. We're going to go over to Cafe Lalibela and have a dinner with all of the young people and anybody who would like to attend from Global Chamber. So if you can come to dinner too.
Yes, I'll just plan to get there around 3 o'clock and just leave when the activities are done. How's that?
Sounds good. Great to see you. Thanks for jumping in today.
Okay, thank you. This was terrific today. Thank you. Thank you.
Anything you need?
No, sir. I'm just eager to get to see you, visit with you, and we'll just get updated here as we go along.
Always a pleasure. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Bye now.